Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. This is Jen Sugarmeyer, your host of Mindset in the Morning. And it is Monday morning here in Dallas, Texas. I don't know where you are, but I hope you had a wonderful weekend. Mine was very good. I'm writing a book and we are on the final phases of it. And so it's exciting to see it all come together. It's called Confidence is Queen. Confidence has been just the top of mind. I've been pouring myself into this book. So we're actually going to be talking about confidence today. And it's one of the most fascinating topics. And I absolutely love giving speeches on it. Confidence is truly queen. So that's how I spent my weekend. It was really good. I did manage to get out and have brunch with some friends on Sunday. And other than that, it was just writing. I was up until, past midnight, both nights, and I enjoyed it. They say when you do what you love, it doesn't feel like work. And so, I've had people recently ask me, they've sent me messages, through social media and said, how do you find so much energy to do whatever it is? And I'm like, I don't know. I'm just really passionate about it. And so I don't know. I'm just going to leave that there because I hope you find something that you're really passionate about. And that's how I am with this book, even though, and I'll be honest, I'm not much of a book reader. But this will be my third book that I've written. So over the weekend, it was interesting. And I have not watched the news this morning. I probably should have plugged into that before we went live, but it was an interesting weekend because the Taliban, after 20 years, took at least the palace back in Kabul. And the reason I find this to be interesting is because I spent a year there. I spent a year over in Afghanistan back in 2010, 2011. So it's been, over 10 years at this point since I've been there. And so when they talk about releasing the prisoners from Bagram Air Force Base, I worked there. When they talk about the US Embassy needing to be evacuated, I was there for like 6 months. So as I'm hearing these stories, it's a little more surreal for me because I had spent time. In fact, I remember being there when they caught Osama bin Laden. That was back in 2011. And I remember walking into the Department of State, which is, I was working for the Department of State, and I was in the embassy. So I walked in the US Embassy in Kabul. And I knew something was going on because the air was just really weird. There was something going on. This was morning time, but you could just tell something was different. And I walked into the building and I looked up at the screen, at the television screen, and they were making the announcement. And it was just me and one other person, and it was an Afghan. And I just remember looking down, because I looked down at everybody because I'm so tall. So I looked down at him and he looked up at me, and we were just like, wow. I mean, it was one of those surreal moments that you never forget. And so as they're talking about things, fortunately, it sounds more peaceful now than some of, the events when I was going on there, but you just never know. So I wanted to talk about last night. I went live on YouTube for a little bit, but this week we're going to talk all about confidence in the middle of a crisis, because it is so important to still have. So confidence it's trust, it's faith, it's knowing that everything is going to be okay. It's security. It's, it's belief, it's believing in yourself. So there's confidence we can have in ourselves. There's confidence we can have in others. So how do we stay confident? How do we, just composing ourselves, how do we stay confident in a crisis? And so I wanted to talk today about emotional intelligence, and think about a leader. Maybe this is somebody, maybe this is the pastor of your church. Maybe it's the leader of your country, whether that be, a president or a prime minister, whomever that may be. Maybe you work in corporate and it's your boss, whomever it is. But think about somebody who has some level of authority. And if there was a crisis, how would you imagine this person responding? And when I think about a leader, I want them to have a high degree of emotional intelligence. And emotional intelligence is really just the ability for us to control our emotions. Imagine if whomever came to mind, the president, the prime minister, the pastor, your boss, maybe think of your boss. Think of your boss. And if you don't have a boss, just imagine you have one. I'm sure you had one at some point when you were 16 years old and worked in a dry cleaner for your first job, which was my job. And imagine if anytime any little thing happened, your boss blew up, like had no control over his or her emotions and was just like, I can't believe this. And all the time you saw your boss just getting enraged at these situations. Or maybe it wasn't, anger. Maybe he was just frustrated, or maybe he was really, embarrassed all the time, or I don't, anxious, just didn't have control over his emotions or her emotions. I mean, it would think about that. How it's hard to want to work for somebody who's all over the map. Now, imagine they had control over their emotions, that something happened. Maybe, maybe it wasn't a good day for sales. That's okay. We don't need to fall apart. Maybe you work in a restaurant and no people came in. Okay. Well, should you crumble, or do you say, hey, that's okay, guys, tomorrow's going to be better? So how are you showing up in that situation? And the truth is, we do not want somebody in a leadership position. I'm going to talk about them specifically, but we don't want somebody in a leadership position that doesn't have control over their emotions. It's exhausting, and there is a trickle effect. So even though you might not take on all of that energy, there is a trickle effect when somebody has emotions. That's why it's so important for us to be careful who we bring in our space. They say you are the average of the 5 people you hang out the most. Okay. So go back through your phone. Who are the 5 people that you text message the most, or that you call the most, or that you hang out with the most? And think about their energy. Is that the energy that you're looking for in your life? I mean, I know I've made changes in my own life. Some of the girls here in Dallas, I just not into. And there are events, and I tell people, I'm like, look, I'm not going because these groups are there and it's just not worth my energy. I protect my energy much more. And the reason is because energy, it flows. It's not stagnant. So if you come in and you have a really bad attitude, you've got a lot of anger, you've got a lot of aggression, people around you are going to feel it. So we have to be responsible with our emotions. We need to be in control of them. So you may not be a leader. I'm going to guess that you are, because I think kind of in some respect, we're all a leader, but you might not be a leader in the sense that you're a CEO of a company or running a business or whatever. But you might be the leader of your family, or one of them. You might be the leader over your household. It might just be you. I don't know. But there's something that you are leading. You are leading yourself, if nothing else. And think about that manager, that boss, that head of state, how would you want them to react in a situation? And so often when there's a crisis, it's so easy for us to get into this state of panic, because it can be scary. It can be scary. I think about, anytime there's war or there's an event that happens. I mean, it could be a shooting. It could be a plane going down. It could be a building that collapses. Anything that happens, this coup that took over, or this coup that happened. I mean, any of these, it's like, because we don't know what's going to happen next. And it's sad because maybe people lost their lives, or people are in danger, or there's there's something that's going to impact human lives. And because we don't know, you see, the future is this thing that we can't control. And because it's not here, it's not now, we don't see it, we get scared. And when things are happening in the here and now and they're scary, that also can put us into a state where we're in panic. So whether it's looking at the here and the now or trying to figure out what's going to happen in the future, it is very easy for us to slip into those states. So it's important for us to manage. I mean, for me, it's important to manage the amount of time that I'm spending on television, watching the news or listening to some of this stuff because it impacts me. It's that same energy. So how can we get control over our emotions? How can we have that level of emotional intelligence? And I love that word. I didn't make it up. So emotional intelligence is how intelligent we are with our emotions. And I don't know, I would like to believe that I have, I think all of us want to say, I'm intelligent with my emotions, versus the inverse of I'm not intelligent with my emotions. I think the inverse of emotional intelligence is to be very, I think of kind of like a Tasmanian devil, just like, blah. However you feel, yeah, you just are. One of those people. Think about them. Think about that person and how they come across, how they rub you. I mean, do you feel good when you're around the person? And, I had a friend one time, and this is one of the people that I mentioned, this girl group here in Dallas, and I don't talk with them anymore, but her boss put in his notification, and she thought she was very close with her boss. But he didn't tell her that he was leaving. He just told her after the fact. I mean, after he had put in his notification. So he said, hey, I have 2 weeks left or 1 week left or whatever. And she went off the roof. I mean, she flew right to the moon. She was like calling me and messaging me and crying. She's like, I can't believe this. I can't believe he didn't tell me. I can't believe this is happening. I hate change. I'm going to have a new boss. What's going to happen then? And I mean, it was really intense. It was intense. And I would say she had zero emotional intelligence. And I'm not, we're human and these things happen. And so it's not that fault on her for feeling this way, because at some point in our life, we've all been there, and it's okay. It's okay to have feelings. I'm not saying don't go into these state of feelings, but it's how are we going to let them impact us? Do we look at them and say, I acknowledge that I'm sad. I acknowledge that I'm frustrated. I acknowledge that, I'm a little scared or anxious. I mean, it's okay to have these and look at these emotions and say, okay, I acknowledge you. It's another thing to just be completely out of control and, flailing all over the place, impacting all these other people in your life because you don't have control over emotions. So it's one thing to look at them. It's another thing to allow them to take over your life. Acknowledgement, take over your life. I think of, just some of the follow-up actions that can come from some of my own times when I've not had emotional intelligence. I mean, I remember I went and got my tongue pierced one time when my car was towed because I was like 16. I had just turned 16. And because I was so mad, I was so pissed off. I was like, ugh. And, I was kind of into self-harm-ish. I mean, not cutting or anything, but I would get angry and I would go pierce one of my ears or something like that. I ended up having a lot of piercings. Anyway, and I did that. And so that's not being in control. It would have been one thing for me to say, wow, my car got towed. This makes me upset. Okay, I need to work on this, versus I'm upset and I need to go act on this and do something to harm my body that will make me feel good. See the difference? So when situations happen, when crises happen, we want to acknowledge, but not act on in a negative way. We need to act, but we need to not act in fear and frustration and anxiety. We've said this over and over. We do not have our most powerful frame of mind. We are not in our most powerful state of being when we are in a state of suffering. And a crisis is a state of suffering. I mean, it lends itself to a lot of that. Crisis is not, having a barbecue with your friends on a Sunday. A crisis is something is happening and it's not good. That is the definition of a crisis versus something good that's happening. So be aware of the emotions that are coming up in your life. Acknowledge them. Don't act on them. Okay. Give yourself some time to respond. Now, depending on the situation, you may need to make, a decision in that moment. And all you can do is the best that you can do. Truly. If someone says you need to make a decision now or we make it, I mean, that's it. Then you have to make a decision. But that's not often that there's that level of zero time. So if that's the case, give yourself a pause. Think through it. Ask somebody. Ask a trusted advisor, ask a mentor, ask someone, how would you respond? How would you react? What are some of the options? And think through them. Play through those situations all the way out until the end and see what they may look like. And things may change. Just because you pick a direction doesn't mean it's going to necessarily play out the way that you think it is. Again, all we can do is guess for the best, right? Guess for the best. But you don't have to respond immediately. I think of how many situations I've put myself in. I don't know if there's situations, but times at work that I've said, oh yeah, I can get that done tomorrow, but I never thought through the logistics. And then tomorrow comes and my boss has an expectation and I'm not able to meet it. Or I'm working so much that I'm making myself insane because I'm trying to get this thing done. And maybe I'm not doing the best job because I'm just trying to get it done versus get it done well. So maybe I needed to think through it. So think through it. Try to forecast whatever decisions you are about to make and what some of those, the ripple effect may look like. But acknowledge your emotions. Think about what's that energy that you want to be putting out there. That's what comes with those emotions. There is energy with all of those. Think about the situation. If you have time, pause, ask somebody that you trust, hey, what might you do? And at the end of the day, it's only you that can decide, but at least maybe you've been given some, additional options or, another way of looking at something. But remember, always in a crisis, like there's no rainbow that comes without a storm. You have to go through the storm in order to see the rainbow. It's a beautiful thing. It really is. So just know that on the other side of this, if we focus on the lessons, the silver lining, how we can grow as a person, as a group, as a society, as a world, as a nation, if we focus on that, then it doesn't seem so insurmountable. We say, wow, we're going to learn and we're going to grow from this, whatever it is. And that will help us to control our emotions, but acknowledge them. Don't suppress them. Say, I acknowledge I'm in fear. It's okay. It's okay to look at them and say, thank you. But then take control. Take control. How is it that you want to be? You want to have a clear state of mind when you're making decisions. So acknowledge that you may be in fear, but don't act on that. Tell yourself where you want to be and be there. So this week, we're talking about confidence in a crisis. Today, we touched on emotional intelligence. I would love if you would subscribe. And I am Jen Sugarmeyer. I am your host of this show that is live 5 days a week at 6 a.m. Central Standard Time. So yes, please subscribe and I will see you back here tomorrow.